is very dear to me because before I was a full-time writer, about 9 or 10 years ago, I spent some time trying to be an artist, and I could draw kind of okay. I could not paint, but Ken was very kind to me in that he let me spend a lot of time in his studio watching him work, and at one stage framing some of my pieces for an exhibition. And he taught me a lot, but generally he took me seriously and gave me the kind of straightforward, matter-of-fact support that as soon as you try to put your own work out in the world, you realize is incredibly rare and difficult to come by. But then Ken as an artist is very dear to me because when I first decided to write seriously about the visual arts about 9 years ago, my first piece to ever appear online and to be read by someone other than myself and some very unlucky friends was a piece about Ken's practice. So before writing this piece, as I mentioned, I'd spent a lot of time in Ken's studio, seeing different pieces at different stages of development and getting a sense of his method and process. So at the time I was studying art history in Trinity. I think it was like in my second or third year. And I remember what struck me most keenly about Ken's paintings was how strongly they resonated with a lot of what we've been looking at in class across this very broad spectrum or extensive time frames. So in terms of tone and tenor, there was a clear underpinning of early Renaissance paintings, like 15th century. And then there was also this really strong connection between his accumulative gestural sensibility and artists like Turner, so English Romanticism, 1700s and 1800s, and Rothko, so second generation abstract expressionism, 1960s. But the paintings were then also, perhaps because of this diverse range of influences, simultaneously quite unlike anything I'd ever seen. There's a danger, I think, in talking about this nuance or fusion in Ken's work, in falling back on words like atmosphere and ambiance. And I think it's worth asking what these words in fact mean, and if they bring us any closer to what's actually going on inside of the painting. So when we say that a painting is atmospheric, what we're saying is that it speaks to moisture and density, that it tells us things about time and temperature, that it transposes to canvas the wear and tear that is the cost of being exposed to the elements of simply being out in the world. And when we say that a work has a particular ambiance, what we're saying is that it not only contains but continually creates its own mood, that it generates its own emotions, which then enact and unfold inside of the painting, regardless of whether or not anyone's looking. But all of this then, again, starts to feel kind of perilously general. So, in particular, looking at these works, we might say there's an inherent sense of drama and gravitas rooted in the movement they're flooded with. There are tumultuous broad sweeps and tight, erratic gestures, swaths of dormant grey, and sudden moments of aquamarine or lapis lazuli brightness. We might say, thinking about the exhibition's title, A Sense of Place, that there's an intensely saturated quality to these paintings, a sense not only of place, but of places that have been worked on to excess by wind and rain. This is land that has quite simply been around for a very long time, and in seeing more than our finite human bodies can fathom, it tells us things about ourselves we may or may not already know. In this way, the works are excavatory. They expose and unearth and are forensic in a deeply poetic sense because, while something has been revealed, it is not a hard truth. The sense we have of these places is intuitive, intangible, and interpretive. Something else I think it can be kind of seductively easy to focus on in Ken's work is the absence of human figures, which is to forget, of course, that we, the viewer, is a human figure who, in looking at these paintings, finds themselves both isolated and immersed, but above all, implicated. We are looking at a cross-section of sky and earth that speaks to what's happening on a climactic and emotional level, both above and below ground. So I think this is maybe the greatest pleasure of these paintings, that even as we're being emphatically reminded that we are a sentient, living body, we're allowed to forget for a few moments that we are the human figure, and we're allowed to experience instead through this very tempestuous prism. So I just want to say what an ongoing pleasure it's been for me to know Ken and to observe his work alter and shift and evolve around its core themes, and hope you all join me